I never imagined I would be here to tell this story. Some things are so painful that we prefer to bury them deep in our memories, as if that could make them disappear. But this story needs to be told. I need to tell it because while I speak, someone might be going through something similar without noticing the signs. My name is Sonia Oliveira, I'm 58 years old and I live in Macapá, Amapá, in a simple house overlooking the Amazon River. A common retiree is what everyone thinks when they see me. An elderly woman with gray hair who tends to her garden and waves to the neighbors. No one would imagine what happened within the walls of my home. No one would suspect that my own daughter, the one I cradled in my arms, tried to poison me. The day started like any other. The Amazon heat was already present early in the morning, and I had just watered my plants when I heard the doorbell. It was Renata, my daughter, accompanied by Mrs. Elisa, her mother-in-law. This immediately struck me as strange. In 6 years of marriage to Felipe, Renata had never brought her mother-in-law to visit me. The two barely spoke, as far as I knew. "Mom, we came to have coffee with you," Renata said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. There was something different about her, a disguised nervousness, an anxiety in her hands that wouldn't stay still. Mrs. Elisa seemed uncomfortable, as if she were there against her will. But manners are manners. So I invited them in. "Let me make the coffee, Mom," Renata insisted, practically pushing me out of the kitchen. "You do everything already, let me take care of this today." I sat in the living room with Mrs. Elisa, an elegant 65-year-old woman, widowed, wealthy, and owner of a pharmacy chain in Amapá. The silence between us was awkward. I tried to make small talk about the weather, about the city, but she responded with monosyllables, her eyes fixed on the kitchen door, as if waiting for something. When Renata returned with the tray, I noticed something in her behavior that put me on alert. The way she placed the cup in front of me, with such precision, such certainty, and that look of anticipation, as if she was eagerly waiting for something. "This is yours, Mom," she said, pointing to a white porcelain cup with blue flowers. "My favorite." "And this is yours, Mrs. Elisa," placing an identical cup in front of her mother-in-law. We chatted for a few minutes about trivial things. Renata talked too much, too fast, as if she wanted to fill any silence. Her eyes constantly darted to my cup, still untouched. "Aren't you going to drink your coffee, Mom?" "It'll get cold," she insisted, with a barely concealed urgency in her voice. That's when a simple, automatic movement changed everything. As I leaned to grab a cookie, my arm brushed against the table. The cup shifted slightly. Instinctively, I rearranged the table and, without realizing it, swapped the cups. Mine ended up in front of Mrs. Elisa and hers in front of me. Renata didn't notice the switch. Neither did I. At that moment, I took a sip of the coffee, noticing a slightly different taste, but nothing alarming. Mrs. Elisa also drank hers. It didn't take more than 5 minutes. We were chatting when Mrs. Elisa began to cough. First a dry cough, then stronger. Her face paled, and beads of sweat began to trickle down her forehead. Suddenly, she brought her hands to her throat, as if she couldn't breathe. "Is everything okay?" I asked, getting up to help. That's when she fell. She simply collapsed from the chair to the floor, her body convulsing, her eyes rolling back. Panic filled the room. "Oh my God, what's happening?" I shouted, rushing to help the fallen woman. And it was then that I saw it. I saw something I would never forget. Renata's face. It wasn't the face of someone worried about a person in distress. It was the face of someone terrified because something had gone terribly wrong. "What did you do?" she screamed at me, her eyes wide with pure panic. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation, a revelation. In that instant, like lightning cutting through the sky, everything became clear. The cups, the switch, the coffee, the poison. The poison meant for me, not for Dona Elisa. My own daughter had tried to kill me. Time seemed to freeze as I processed this reality. Around me, chaos ensued. Dona Elisa on the floor, Renata screaming, and I stood in the middle of the room. a statue of shock and horror. "We need to call an ambulance," I finally managed to say, returning to reality. I ran to the phone, dialing the emergency number with trembling fingers. As we waited for help, I watched Renata. She was trying to assist her mother-in-law, but her movements were mechanical, her eyes empty. It wasn't concern I saw there, it was calculation, fear of the consequences. The ambulance arrived in 12 minutes that felt like an eternity. The paramedics rushed in, assessed Dona Elisa, and placed her on a stretcher. "Possible poisoning," I heard one of them say over the radio. "Patient in critical condition." Before I could react, Renata approached me, gripping my arm too tightly. "I'm going with her to the hospital," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "You stay here, Mom, rest." It must have been something she ate earlier. There was a veiled threat in those words, a silent warning. As she left through the door behind the paramedics, I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew I had just escaped death by a twist of fate, and I also knew I wasn't safe. As soon as I was alone, the adrenaline began to fade, and my legs weakened. I fell onto the sofa, staring at the cup still on the table. 2 identical cups. One of them contained enough poison to kill someone. That's when I realized that in recent months, I had been feeling strange, unexplained weakness, dizziness, mental confusion, small symptoms I attributed to age, to fatigue. But what if Renata had been poisoning me slowly, for weeks, months, perhaps? The pieces began to fit together in my mind. Renata's more frequent visits, always insisting on preparing my food, my tea. The questions about my will, about the value of the house, Felipe's sudden interest, my unemployed son-in-law, about my retirement investments. I looked out the window, watching the ambulance drive away, the red lights flashing on the quiet street. I had escaped today, but for how long? Would they try again? I was sure of it. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't be a victim in defense. I wouldn't die at the hands of my own daughter. If they wanted war, they would have it. And I had an advantage they were completely unaware of. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. When the familiar voice answered on the other end, I took a deep breath. "Paolo, it's Sonia. I need your help. Something happened that you won't believe." 2. The beginning of the plot. Paolo arrived in less than 20 minutes. Even though he had been retired from the police for 5 years, he still had that sharp gaze that so many criminals feared. My old friend, a colleague from my days in the forensic lab, sat in my office, carefully examining the coffee cups I had preserved. "Are you sure about this, Sonia? It's a very serious accusation." I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of those words. Accusing my own daughter of attempted murder. What kind of mother would do that? But the evidence was right in front of me. "I have Paolo, didn't you see her look?" It wasn't concern for her mother-in-law, it was panic because the plan had gone wrong. I told him about the symptoms I had been feeling over the past few months, how I gradually felt weaker, more confused, with memory lapses that I attributed to age. How my neighbor Marlene had mentioned seeing Renata tampering with my medications when she thought no one was watching. "I need you to analyze these cups, and I also need you to cut a strand of my hair." Paolo raised his eyebrows. "Arsenic poisoning leaves traces in hair. If I'm being poisoned slowly, the evidence will be there." As Paolo collected the samples, I sat on the couch trying to process everything. Memories came back like painful flashes. Renata, at 5 years old, asking to be held after a nightmare. At 15, receiving the award for Best Student. At 22, radiant in her graduation dress from psychology college. Where did it all go wrong? At what moment did my daughter become someone capable of killing her own mother? "I'll take this to Thago's lab," Paolo said, carefully storing the samples. "He owes me a few favors. We'll have the results in 48 hours, no official records for now." When Paolo left, the silence of the house enveloped me like a heavy cloak. I picked up my phone hesitantly. I should call the hospital, pretend to be concerned about Mrs. Elisa, but if Renata answered, what would I say? I decided to wait. If I was right, I needed to be cautious, very cautious. The next morning, the doorbell rang. It was Marlene, my 62-year-old neighbor, a retiree like me, but with eyes that missed nothing. Sonia, I saw the ambulance yesterday. Is everything okay? I invited her in. Marlene was the only person besides Paolo that I could trust at that moment. I told her everything that had happened, watching her eyes widen with each new revelation. I knew something was off with your daughter, she exclaimed, banging on the table. In the past few weeks, every time she left here, I noticed you seemed different, paler, confused. I even thought you had some illness you didn't want to tell me about. Marlene confirmed what I had already suspected. She had seen Renata tampering with my medication several times. I thought she was just organizing things like a helpful daughter would, but then my phone rang, interrupting our conversation. It was an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Miss Sonia, this is Dr. Tiago Albuquerque from the Macapá Emergency Hospital. I'm calling about Elisa Mendonça. My heart raced. Yes, doctor. How is she? Stable, but still in the ICU. Tests confirmed poisoning from a substance we are trying to identify. The police have been notified, as is protocol in these cases. I took a deep breath. The police. This complicated everything. Your daughter said you were present when it all happened. Yes, doctor. We were having coffee at my house when Ms. Elisa fell ill. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ms. Sonia, I believe it's important for you to come to the hospital. There are questions we need to clarify. After hanging up, I looked at Marlene. I need to go to the hospital. The police are involved. Do you want me to go with you? I shook my head. No. I need you to stay alert. If Renata comes here while I'm out, let me know immediately on the way to the hospital. My mind was racing. If the police were investigating, I needed to be extremely careful. Without Paolo to protect me, I was alone in a dangerous game. The Macapá Emergency Hospital was a gray, impersonal building. At the reception, I informed them I was there to see Ms. Elisa Mendonça and was directed to the 4th floor, ICU. In the ICU corridor, I spotted Renata talking to a tall man in a suit. By his posture and the way he held a small notepad, I immediately identified him as a police officer. She was gesturing, tears streaming down her face, the perfect image of a worried daughter. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed for a moment, almost imperceptibly, before returning to a look of anguish. Mom, I'm so glad you came, she exclaimed, rushing to hug me. I felt her tense body against mine, her arms wrapping around me like claws. An empty, mechanical hug. How is Ms. Elisa? I asked, gently pulling away. Stable, the suited man replied, stepping closer. I'm investigator Ricardo Muniz. You must be Sonia Oliveira? I confirmed with a nod. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. Ms. Elisa was poisoned with an unidentified substance. We are investigating the circumstances. Renata quickly intervened. My mom has nothing to do with this, investigator. She and Ms. Elisa barely know each other. Why would she do something like that? The investigator's gaze shifted from Renata to me. It's protocol, ma'am. We need to hear from everyone present. We were led to a small empty waiting room. The investigator asked Renata to wait outside, wanting to speak to me alone. She hesitated, giving me a look that seemed to say, be careful what you say before you leave. Miss Sonia, your daughter told us you were having coffee when Ms. Elisa fell ill. Can you describe exactly what happened? I decided to tell the truth, but not the whole truth. Not yet. Renata brought Ms. Elisa to visit me, something that had never happened before. She insisted on making coffee for the three of us. We were chatting when Ms. Elisa suddenly became very ill. We called the ambulance immediately. Did you notice anything strange in someone's behavior? Something unusual? I thought carefully before answering. Renata seemed nervous, but I imagined it was due to the discomfort of being with her mother-in-law, with whom she never had a good relationship. And do you know if Mrs. Elisa has any enemies? Anyone who might want to harm her? I shook my head. I don't know her well enough to say. The investigator asked a few more routine questions before letting me go. As I left the room, I found Renata in the hallway, pretending to read a magazine, but clearly waiting to know what I had said. What did he ask, Mom? The basics? What happened? If I noticed anything strange. Her eyes searched mine, trying to read my intentions. And what did you say? The truth that we were having coffee when Mrs. Elisa got sick. Renata seemed to relax a bit. The doctor said she should recover, but she's still under observation. Felipe is coming from work here. Felipe, my son-in-law. The accomplice. I imagined. The mention of his name reminded me that I was dealing not just with Renata, but possibly with both of them. I'm going to see Mrs. Elisa, I announced, walking toward the ICU. Mom, she's sedated, she won't recognize you. Even so, in the ICU, Mrs. Elisa was connected to several monitors, her pale face contrasting with the white sheets. A nurse was checking her vital signs. How is she? I asked. Stable? The worst is over, but she's still not out of danger, the nurse replied, making notes in the chart. Are you a relative? I'm a friend. When the nurse left, I approached the bed. Looking at Mrs. Elisa's unconscious face, I felt a mix of guilt and relief. Guilt because, in a way, I had caused this by switching the cups. Relief because if I hadn't done that, it would be me in that bed. Or worse, I'm sorry, I whispered, lightly touching her hand, but I promise I will find out the truth. As I left the ICU, I noticed Renata was on the phone speaking quietly at the end of the hallway. I approached silently, trying to listen. She didn't say anything. I guess not. Suspicious. No, Felipe. We can't do anything now with the police involved. We need to wait. Yes. The plan continues. We just need to be more careful. I stepped back before she saw me. My heart raced. It was the confirmation I needed. There was a plan, and I was the target. When I returned home that afternoon, I found Paulo waiting for me. His serious face told me everything before he even spoke. We found arsenic in the samples from the cup and in her hair too, Sonia. Low levels, but consistent with gradual poisoning over weeks. I sat down, feeling the weight of that confirmation. It was real. My own daughter was trying to kill me slowly. Why, Paulo? Why would she do this? Paulo hesitated. I did some discreet investigations. Your house, Sonia. Did you know the land has appreciated significantly in recent months? I frowned. What do you mean? That international resort they are building in the area is going to transform the whole region. Your land is worth at least 5 times more now. And there's something else. He paused. I found out that Renata is in serious financial trouble. Gambling debts mainly. Felipe too. They are practically broke. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The house, money, the oldest motive in the world for a crime. What do we do now? I asked. We need more evidence. Concrete evidence that links Renata directly to the attempted murder. And we need to find out if Felipe is involved too. While Paulo talked about installing hidden cameras in my house and monitoring Renata's communications, my phone rang. It was Marlene. Sonia. Renata is here, entering your house with Felipe. They have a key. I looked at Paulo, alarmed. They're here. We need to leave now, Paulo said, getting up. Through the back door. We can't let them see you with me. We slipped out through the back of the house, sneaking through the garden to the parallel street where Paulo's car was parked. From inside the vehicle, I saw Renata and Felipe leaving my house. They looked agitated, arguing with each other. What do you think they were looking for? I asked. Probably evidence. The cups maybe, or they wanted to plant more poison. That night, I couldn't go back home. I stayed in Paolo's apartment, trying to process everything that was happening. My daughter, my son-in-law, a plan to kill me for money. It was too surreal. The next day, Paolo helped me install small cameras in strategic spots around my house. We also set up a system to record any conversations inside the property. It was an invasion of privacy, technically illegal, but we were dealing with an attempted murder. Now we need a plan, Paolo said after we finished the installations. If we go back to the hospital, we can try to talk to Donna Elisa when she wakes up. She might know something. I agreed. Donna Elisa was a key piece in this puzzle. She had come to my house with Renata that fateful day. Why? Was it just a coincidence or was there something more? As we prepared to leave, I received a call from the hospital. It was Dr. Thago again. Signora Sonia, I have news about Donna Elisa. She has woken up. I exchanged a glance with Paolo. This was our chance. We're on our way, I replied, hanging up the phone. On the way to the hospital, Paolo warned me. Be careful. We don't know if Renata or Felipe will be there, and we can't let them know we're investigating. I nodded, feeling a mix of determination and fear. The truth was within our reach, and I wouldn't rest until I uncovered exactly what my daughter had planned. And why? When we arrived at the hospital, a surprise awaited us. Donna Elisa was no longer in the ICU, she had been transferred to a private room, and more importantly, she was alone. Neither Renata nor Felipe were around. This is our chance, Paolo whispered. We entered the room quietly. Donna Elisa was awake, staring out the window with a distant expression. When she saw us, her eyes widened in recognition. Signora Sonia, she said, her voice weak but firm. I was waiting for you. 3. The moment of revelation. I approached the hospital bed cautiously, feeling my heart race. Paolo stayed near the door, like a silent guardian, checking the hallway to ensure we wouldn't be caught off guard. Donna Elisa, I spoke softly. How are you feeling? Her tired but alert eyes locked onto mine. There was something in that gaze, an understanding, a wisdom that surprised me. Poisoned, she replied with a frankness that caught me off guard. But it wasn't for me, was it? It was for you. A chill ran down my spine. So she knew. Somehow, Mrs. Elisa was aware of what had happened. How? I started to ask, but she interrupted me with a slight wave of her hand. I didn't come to your house by chance that day, Mrs. Sonia. I came to warn you. Paolo leaned in, intrigued. Warn me about what exactly? Mrs. Elisa adjusted herself in bed, making a slight grimace of pain over her daughter and my son, about their plan. I sat in the chair beside the bed, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. Did you know? I found out by accident about a week ago. Felipe left his laptop open at my house while he went to the bathroom. I saw emails between him and Renata. She hesitated, looking at me with compassion. And about how to get rid of you, how to make you gradually sick until it seemed like natural causes, how to take possession of the house after your passing. A knot formed in my throat. Hearing that from someone else made it all the more real, more painful. They mentioned arsenic, Mrs. Elisa continued. Small doses in the medicine, in the tea, in the food. Felipe got the substance through a contact in construction. He worked briefly with that before being fired. That's why you came to my house? Paolo asked. Exactly. I couldn't just call or text. Renata monitors her mother's phone, you know? And I couldn't bring it up in public. So, I made up an excuse for Renata to take me there. I said I wanted to make amends, to get to know my son's mother-in-law better. But why did Renata agree? I questioned. Didn't she suspect? A bitter smile appeared on Mrs. Elisa's lips, because she thought it was the perfect opportunity. With an outside witness, it would be even less suspicious when you started feeling unwell during our visit. She planned to dose the poison more heavily that day so you would need hospitalization. She was tired of the slow process, from what I understood in the emails. I exchanged a glance with Paolo. That explained Renata's anxiety, her insistence that I drink the coffee quickly. And when we accidentally switched cups? I murmured. Exactly. Fate has a peculiar sense of humor, doesn't it? Mrs. Elisa paused, her breathing becoming heavier. I couldn't warn you in time. Renata didn't leave me alone with you for a minute. I was about to create a distraction when the poison started to take effect. You saved my life, I said, taking her wrinkled hand in mine. Even though she couldn't warn me directly, Mrs. Elisa squeezed my hand back. I couldn't just stand by and watch my son and his daughter commit such a heinous crime. Even if it means, she hesitated, even if it means betraying my own son. Paolo, always the investigator, leaned closer. Mrs. Elisa, would you be willing to officially document all of this? It would be crucial for us to build a case against them. A shadow of doubt crossed the elderly woman's face. My own son, it's so hard. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if battling internally. But it's the right thing to do. Yes. I will officially document everything as soon as I'm a bit stronger. At that moment, we heard voices in the hallway. Paolo quickly moved to the door, peeking through the crack. It's Renata. He whispered, turning to us urgently. With Felipe, they're coming this way. My blood ran cold. We couldn't be caught here. Not like this. The bathroom, Donna Elisa pointed out quickly. Hide in there. Paolo and I barely had time to lock ourselves in the small bathroom before the door swung open. Through the crack, I could see my daughter and son-in-law entering the room. Renata was carrying a bouquet of flowers, a fake smile plastered on her face. Donna Elisa, it's so good to see you awake. Her voice sounded sweet, laced with false concern. We brought flowers. How are you feeling? Better, Renata. Thank you, Donna Elisa replied, and I was impressed by her ability to mask her true feelings. Nothing in her voice betrayed what she had just told us. Did the doctor say what caused the discomfort? Felipe asked. I noticed a tension in his voice that didn't match the apparent concern. They're still running tests, Donna Elisa replied vaguely. They mentioned something about possible food poisoning. How terrible, Renata commented, placing the flowers in a vase. Was my mom very worried? Did she ask about you? I can imagine, Donna Elisa replied. And I noticed a hint of irony that seemed to go unnoticed by both of them. She's a very kind woman. Speaking of which, Felipe said, sitting on the edge of the bed. You didn't mention our financial situation to anyone, he remarked. You know how Renata's mom can be nosy sometimes? I held my breath. The financial situation was clearly a euphemism for something more sinister. I didn't have the chance, Donna Elisa replied. We barely exchanged a few words before the incident. Felipe seemed to visibly relax. Great. We don't want to worry her with our problems, do we? She already has so much to deal with. Yes, Donna Elisa agreed. Including her health, which has been so fragile lately. I noticed the quick glance that Renata and Felipe exchanged, a look of complicity that confirmed everything Donna Elisa had told us. Fortunately, she's strong, Renata commented, unnecessarily adjusting the flowers in the vase. She always recovers. Until when? Donna Elisa asked, and the tone of her voice subtly changed. There was a moment of tense silence. Felipe cleared his throat. What do you mean by that, Mom? Nothing, Donna Elisa replied, leaning back against the pillows. Just musings of an old sick woman. I'm tired now. Could you come back later? Of course, Renata replied quickly, pulling Felipe by the arm. Let's let her rest. We'll come back tomorrow. When the door closed behind them, Paolo and I waited a few seconds before stepping out of the bathroom. Donna Elisa looked at us, her face now clearly showing the fatigue she had tried to hide. They suspect, she said quietly. Not directly of you, but they've noticed something is wrong. Paolo nodded gravely. We need to act fast. Are you willing to use a recorder the next time they come? We need to capture some confession, some concrete evidence. I'll do whatever it takes, Donna Elisa replied with determination. I won't allow my son to become a killer. We left the hospital through a side entrance, careful not to be seen. In the car, Paolo and I discussed our next steps. We have the recordings from the cameras at your house, he said. Let's check if they captured anything useful. And tomorrow, we'll equip Donna Elisa with a microphone. Meanwhile, I asked, I can't go home, it's not safe. You'll stay at my apartment for now, until we have enough evidence. That night, we reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras, and there it was, clear as day, Renata and Felipe rummaging through my house, searching for the coffee cups that Paolo had fortunately taken for analysis. Their conversation was incriminating. We need to make sure there's no evidence, Felipe said, opening drawers and cabinets. If the police find any trace of arsenic here, I've checked her medications, Renata replied. I replaced all the ones we tampered with. There's no way they can connect it to us. And your mother? Does she suspect anything? Renata laughed. A cold sound that sent chills down my spine. My mother, she hardly knows what day it is. All that arsenic has already affected her brain. Even if she tries to say something, who would believe a confused old woman? I watched that scene with a knot in my stomach. My own daughter speaking about me with such disdain, such cruelty. The resort starts construction in 2 months, Felipe continued, slamming a drawer shut. Once the land is officially theirs, the value of this house will quintuple. We can't miss this opportunity. We won't miss it, Renata assured. Mom won't last that long. We'll find another way. But discreetly. I turned off the video, unable to keep watching. Paolo placed his hand on my shoulder in a silent gesture of support. We have enough evidence for a search warrant, he said. But we need more for a solid conviction. The confession that Donna Elisa can get will be crucial. The next day, we returned to the hospital early. Paolo brought a small button-sized recorder that could easily be hidden in Donna Elisa's nightgown. We need you to get them to talk about the plan, Paolo explained as I helped position the device. Any mention of poisoning, the house, the money. I understand, Donna Elisa replied, determined. Leave it to me. We had barely finished setting up the equipment when we heard knocks at the door. Paolo and I exchanged alarmed glances. The bathroom again, Donna Elisa whispered. We repeated the maneuver from the day before, hiding in the small bathroom. This time, however, it wasn't Renata or Felipe, but investigator Ricardo Muniz. Mrs. Mendonça, he said formally. How are you feeling today? Better, thank you. The doctors identified the substance that caused your poisoning. Arsenic. Do you have any idea how you might have ingested it? There was a brief silence. Through the crack in the door, I saw Donna Elisa adjust herself in bed, a thoughtful expression on her face. In the coffee, she finally replied. We were having coffee at Mrs. Sonia's house. And who made that coffee? Renata, her daughter. The investigator took some notes. Do you think it was intentional? Donna Elisa took a deep breath. Investigator, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. My heart raced. She was about to reveal everything to the official investigator. Something we hadn't planned. I'm listening. Muniz replied, pulling up a chair to sit next to the bed. I believe the poison wasn't meant for me, began Mrs. Elisa. It was for Mrs. Sonia, and I think the culprits are my son, Felipe, and his wife, Renata. The investigator raised his eyebrows, clearly surprised by her frankness. That's a very serious accusation, ma'am. Do you have proof? Emails, she responded. I saw emails between them discussing how to poison Mrs. Sonia slowly so it would look like natural causes. They wanted her house, which will increase in value with the new resort being built. The investigator quickly took notes. Would you be willing to make this statement officially and let us access those emails? Yes, Mrs. Elisa replied without hesitation. I'll do whatever it takes to prevent a murder. When the investigator left, Paolo and I emerged from the bathroom, stunned by what had just happened. This wasn't the plan, Paolo said, running his hand through his gray hair. But maybe it's better this way. Now the official investigation is underway. I couldn't wait any longer, Mrs. Elisa explained. I saw the opportunity and I took it. I'm afraid of what Felipe and Renata might try next now that the first plan has failed. No sooner had she finished speaking than we heard new knocks at the door. This time, we had no time to hide. The door opened, revealing Renata and Felipe, who stopped in shock at the sight of us. Mom. Renata's voice was sharp, her eyes darting from me to Paolo, then to Mrs. Elisa. What's going on here? The silence that followed felt charged with electricity. Felipe broke it, his face twisting in a rage as he grasped the situation. You told them, didn't you? He accused his mother. Traitor. Felipe. Renata grabbed his arm, trying to restrain him. We don't know what she said. Don't rush, but it was too late. The anger had shattered the facade of normalcy they had worked so hard to maintain. We know everything, I declared, facing my daughter with a firm gaze, the arsenic in my medications, the plan to kill me slowly, all for my house, for the money. Renata's face paled, but she quickly composed herself. What are you talking about, Mom? You're confused, delusional. I think we need to call a doctor. I'm not confused, I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. We have the recordings from the cameras at home. You two discussing how to get rid of the evidence, how to replace the tainted medications. Felipe stepped forward threateningly. You have nothing. Just the ramblings of a senile old woman. No one will believe you. Paolo stepped between us. I will believe her. And so will the lab that found arsenic in her hair samples. And the police, who are already investigating the case. As if to confirm his words, the door opened again, revealing Investigator Muniz, accompanied by two uniformed officers. Felipe Mendonça and Renata Oliveira, he announced formally, you are under arrest for questioning in the attempted murder case against Elisa Mendonça and Sonia Oliveira. What followed was like a scene in slow motion. Felipe tried to flee, pushing one of the officers only to be quickly subdued. Renata stood frozen, as if in shock, until the handcuffs were placed on her wrists. Mom, she said, looking at me with pleading eyes. Don't let them do this. You don't understand. We needed the money. The debts? Debts don't justify murder. I replied, feeling a deep pain in my chest. You were my daughter, Renata. I would have given everything for you. All you had to do was ask. As the police led them away, Renata looked back one last time. There was no more pleading in her eyes, just a cold hatred that made me shudder. This isn't over, she hissed. It's not over. I stood there watching my daughter being taken by the police, accused of trying to kill me. A part of me died in that moment, along with all the love and trust one once had in her. Donna Elisa reached out, holding my hand. Two mothers united by the betrayal of their own children, by a pain only a mother could understand. We did the right thing, she said softly. As painful as it is, I felt unable to speak. The right thing, yes, but at what cost? When we finally left the hospital that day, the sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky of Macapá with shades of red and orange. A day ends, I thought, and another begins. Somehow, I would find the strength to move on, to rebuild my life from the ashes of this betrayal. The truth, as painful as it was, had set me free. And now, for the first time in months, I breathed without the weight of fear, without the shadow of death looming over me. 4. The investigation and the truth. The days following Renata and Felipe's arrest were a whirlwind of emotions and legal proceedings. I temporarily stayed at Marlene's house, my neighbor, unable to return to my own home. That space, once my refuge, now felt tainted by the memories of betrayal. Paulo accompanied me to the police station to give my official statement. The officer in charge of the case was a middle-aged man named Antonio Mendez, with tired eyes that seemed to have seen every kind of human cruelty possible. "Miss Sonia," he began after I settled into the chair in front of his desk. "I want you to understand that this is a very delicate case. Charges of attempted murder among family members are always complicated." I nodded, feeling the weight of each word. "I understand, officer, but I have all the evidence." He flipped through the report in front of him. "Yes, Investigator Muniz passed everything to me. The recordings, the hair tests, Dona Elisa's statement, it's a strong case." "And what happens now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your son-in-law confessed," the officer revealed, surprising me. "In exchange for a possible reduction in sentence, he is willing to testify against his daughter, saying the plan was entirely hers." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Of course he would say that, cowardice until the end. The officer looked at me with an expression that mixed compassion and professional curiosity. "You seem strangely composed for someone who just found out her own daughter tried to kill her." I took a deep breath, feeling tears threatening to rise, but I held them back. "I've already mourned, officer, when I saw those recordings, when I heard Renata speak of me with such disdain, the daughter I knew no longer exists." He nodded, understanding. "I see. Well, the process will take its course. There will be a preliminary hearing next week. Will you be present?" "I will," I confirmed. Although the thought of facing Renata again tightened my chest, when I left the police station, Paulo was waiting for me outside. His face showed a strange expression, a mix of concern and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "Sonia, there's something I need to show you." I didn't want to say anything before because, well, I needed to confirm it first. He led me to his car, and during the drive, he remained strangely silent. We didn't go to Marlene's house as I expected, but to a small office in the city center, where Paulo had set up a sort of makeshift headquarters for our investigation. "Do you remember when Felipe mentioned the resort in the recordings?" Paulo asked as he opened the office door. I was intrigued, so I did some research. Inside the office, an entire wall was covered with documents, photos, and maps connected by colored strings, a physical version of those investigation boards you see in crime movies. "What is all this?" I asked, stepping closer to examine the real reason why his daughter and son-in-law wanted his house. He replied, pointing to a map of the area. "It's not just about the value due to the proximity to the resort. It's much more complex and valuable than we imagined." He pointed to a red-marked area on the map that included my house and several neighboring lots. "This whole area is being negotiated not just for a resort, but for an entire tourist complex. Shopping center, casino, private marina, an investment of hundreds of millions." I frowned, confused. "But how does this change things?" "We already knew they wanted the house for its value." Paulo shook his head. "It's not just that. Look at this." He showed me a folder with documents. I found records of a shell company that has been quietly acquiring all the properties in the area. Guess who's behind this company? A chill ran down my spine. Renata? No, not just Renata, Roberto Pixoto, Elisa's friend? I asked incredulously. Exactly. The same one who introduced himself as a retired prosecutor. He's not a prosecutor at all, Sonia. He's a ruthless businessman, known for fraudulent real estate schemes, and from what I've discovered, he's been romantically involved with your daughter for at least a year. The revelation hit me like a punch. Renata and Roberto, an affair. And Felipe? Did he know about this? There's more, Paulo continued, noticing my shock. Felipe didn't just recently find out about the poisoning. He knew from the beginning but was being blackmailed by Renata and Roberto. They have evidence linking him to an embezzlement case at the company where he worked before being fired. My God, I murmured, sitting heavily in the nearest chair. It's more sordid than we imagined. Much more, Paolo agreed. And the worst part is, we suspect your house won't be the last. Elisa is also on the list. Her property in Jardín Marco Zero is exactly where they plan to build the main entrance to the complex. The mention of Elisa made me think of her. How is she? Still in the hospital. She was discharged yesterday. She's staying with a cousin under police protection. We're worried that Roberto might try something against her now that she has become a key witness. I massaged my temples, trying to process all this information. We need to tell the police. I already did, Paolo assured me. But there's a problem. Roberto has powerful connections, politicians, judges. It won't be easy to bring him down. I suddenly stood up, filled with fierce determination. I don't care how powerful he is. They tried to kill Paolo, they tried to kill Donna Elisa. I won't rest until everyone involved pays for this. Paolo smiled, a look of pride on his face. That's why I prepared a plan. In the following days, we worked tirelessly, gathering more evidence, connecting more dots. We discovered that Roberto had bribed public officials to obtain insider information about the tourist complex project even before it was officially announced. This allowed him to start acquiring properties at prices far below market value. We also found out we weren't the first victims. 2 years earlier, an elderly man who refused to sell his property in the same area died of natural causes. The autopsy at the time found nothing suspicious, but Paolo managed to get permission to exhume the body. The new tests revealed traces of arsenic, the same poison used on me and Donna Elisa. The web was larger and more sinister than we could imagine, and at its center, my own daughter. The night before the preliminary hearing, I received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Thago from the hospital. Sonora Sonia, I need to see you urgently. I found something in Donna Elisa's tests that, well, it's better to talk in person. Paolo accompanied me to the hospital, both of us tense and anxious. Dr. Thago welcomed us into his office, his face displaying a serious expression. What did you find, doctor? I asked as soon as we sat down. He placed a folder on the table. I retested Donna Elisa's toxicology with more advanced technology. The arsenic was there, yes, but we also found traces of another substance. He paused, looking at us seriously. Belladonna, in a concentration sufficient to be lethal. 2 different substances? Paolo asked, leaning forward. Exactly. And interestingly, the belladonna wasn't in the coffee. By the absorption pattern, it was administered a few hours earlier, probably in a medication or food. I exchanged an alarmed glance with Paolo. This means there were 2 poisoning plans happening simultaneously, the doctor concluded. One using arsenic, the other using belladonna. The revelation hung in the air like a heavy cloud. If the arsenic was Renata and Felipe's plan, whose plan was the belladonna? I need to talk to Donna Elisa, I declared, standing up. Immediately, Paolo called the officer responsible for Donna Elisa's protection, who informed us that she was safe at her cousin's house. We headed there directly, our car cutting through the streets of Macapá as night fell. Donna Elisa's cousin lived in a middle-to-upper-class condominium on the outskirts of the city. A police officer greeted us at the gate, checking our identities before allowing us in. Donna Elisa was in the living room having tea with a kindly-looking woman who was introduced to us as Luia, her cousin. Her face lit up upon seeing us, but she quickly noticed our serious expressions. Is something wrong? She asked, dismissing her cousin with a gentle gesture. Donna Elisa, I began, sitting down beside her. Did you take any medication or eat anything in common before you came to my house that day? She frowned, deep in thought. Well, I took my usual medications in the morning, and Roberto stopped by to see me. He brought some imported chocolates. Roberto. I repeated, feeling a chill. Did you eat those chocolates? Just one. I'm not much of a sweets person. Do you know why? What's happening? Paolo and I explained what Dr. Thago had discovered. Donna Elisa paled as she grasped the implications. Roberto tried to poison me too. Her voice was a horrified whisper. But why has he always been so attentive to keep your property? I explained. And possibly your money too. We found out he and Renata have been together for a while. Tears welled up in Donna Elisa's eyes. I trusted him. He was my friend for decades. I took her hands in mine, feeling her pain as if it were my own. We had both been betrayed by the people we trusted most. We need your help, Paolo said gently. Roberto doesn't know we've discovered his involvement. We can use this to our advantage. How? Donna Elisa asked, wiping her tears with determination. A trap, Paolo replied. But it would be risky. Would you be willing? Donna Elisa straightened her shoulders, a new strength shining in her eyes. That man conspired with my daughter-in-law to kill my son and steal my property and tried to poison me. I will do whatever it takes to see him behind bars. The plan was bold, but it could work. Donna Elisa would call Roberto, saying she discovered something about the real estate business in the area and wanted to discuss selling her property. The conversation would be recorded, and the house would be equipped with cameras and microphones. Police would be strategically positioned, ready to intervene. We spent the night refining every detail. Donna Elisa's safety was our top priority. She would receive a panic device that, when activated, would bring the police immediately. The next morning, everything was set. I watched from an adjacent room through a monitor showing the living room where Donna Elisa waited. Paolo was with the police team, coordinating the operation. At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Roberto Pixoto, 67 years old, entered the house with a friendly smile and a bouquet of flowers. If I didn't know the truth, I would never suspect that behind that facade of an elderly gentleman lurked a calculating murderer. Elisa dear, he greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. I was so happy to get your call. How are you feeling? Better, Roberto. Thank you, Donna Elisa replied, perfectly playing her role. The doctors say it was just a mild poisoning. I'll be fully recovered soon. Great. Great. He smiled, sitting on the sofa next to her. So, you mentioned something about selling your property? I must admit I was surprised. Times change, don't they? Donna Elisa shrugged. After the incident, I've been thinking a lot. This house is too big for me alone. And with Felipe in jail, she left the sentence hanging, a calculated tremor in her voice. A wise decision, Roberto agreed, leaning slightly. In fact, I know some investors who would be very interested. They could offer a pretty generous amount. Investors like you, Roberto? Donna Elisa asked, and I noticed a subtle change in her voice. The moment was approaching. Roberto seemed momentarily taken aback. Well, I have some real estate investments. Of course, but investments like the company Novo Horizonte Empreendimentos, continued Donna Elisa, referring to the front company we had uncovered, the one quietly buying up all the properties in the area for the tourist complex. Roberto's face hardened. How do you know this? I have my contacts, Donna Elisa replied vaguely, just as I know about you and Renata. A heavy silence fell over the room. Roberto's friendly smile had completely vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating expression that revealed his true nature. I always knew you were clever, Elisa, he finally said, his voice now devoid of warmth. It's a shame really, we could have done this the easy way. Like poisoning me with beautiful chocolates? Donna Elisa asked directly. Or maybe trying again today. Roberto laughed. A sound that sent chills down my spine. I see you've discovered more than you should have. You know what happens to people who know too much, don't you? He stood up, pulling something from his suit pocket. My heart raced. Would it be a weapon? But it was a small box that he opened to reveal more chocolates. A last sweet for the road, Elisa. He offered with a sinister smile. I promise this time it will be quick, no suffering. It was the confession we needed. Donna Elisa pressed the panic button in her pocket, and in the next moment, police burst into the room from all entrances. "Roberto Pixoto," announced Chief Mendez, entering the room with his gun drawn. "You are under arrest for attempted murder against Elisa Mendonça and conspiracy to commit murder." Roberto's face twisted in fury as the officers handcuffed him. His eyes met Dona Elisa's, brimming with hatred. "You don't understand what you've done," he hissed. "I have connections. I won't be locked up for long." "Don't count on it," I replied, stepping into the room. "We have evidence not only of this crime but also of the poisoning of Antonio Ferreira years ago. And I'm sure that with a deeper investigation, we'll find other victims." The mention of the previous case made Roberto pale. He was led away by the police, still throwing threats and curses. When we were finally alone, Dona Elisa collapsed onto the sofa, trembling. I sat beside her, holding her hands. "It's over," I murmured. "We did it." She felt it. Tears of relief streamed down her wrinkled face. "Renata, Felipe, Roberto, all in custody." "But at what cost, Sonia?" "We lost so much, we gained the truth," I replied, feeling a strange peace despite everything. "And our lives, they didn't get what they wanted." We looked at each other. Two women marked by betrayal, united by shared pain and the strength we discovered within ourselves. A dark chapter had ended, but our story would continue. That afternoon, I returned home for the first time since Renata's arrest. Marlene accompanied me, worried about my reaction. "Are you sure you're ready?" she asked as I hesitated at the door. I took a deep breath, looking at that house where I had raised my daughter, where I had built memories, where I almost lost my life. "I am," I replied, turning the key in the lock. "This place is mine. I won't let them take this from me too." 5. The revenge and the twist. Entering my home was like diving into a river of memories. Some sweet, others now poisoned by betrayal. Each room seemed to whisper stories from the past. There was the mark on the wall where I measured Renata's height as a child. There was the armchair where I read her stories before bed. How could something that started with so much love end in such betrayal? "Do you want me to stay tonight?" Marlene asked, concern evident in her voice. I shook my head. "I need to face this alone, my friend. But thank you." After Marlene left, I slowly walked through the house, touching furniture, looking at photographs. I stopped in front of a frame showing Renata at her graduation. Her eyes shone with pride, and mine with love. I turned the photo face down. I could no longer look at that face without feeling a toxic mix of love and pain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed on the porch, watching the Amazon River reflect the moonlight, its dark waters holding as many secrets as the human heart. When the sun finally rose on the horizon, I had made a decision. I would not be just a victim in this story. I would take control of the narrative. The preliminary hearing was set for 2 days later. Paulo informed me that with the new evidence about Roberto, the case had gained greater proportions. Journalists from all over the state were interested in the resort conspiracy story, as the press was already calling it. "Are you ready for this?" Paulo asked when he picked me up to go to the courthouse. "There will be a lot of exposure, and I am more than ready," I replied, adjusting the pearl necklace that had been a gift from my late husband. "I want everyone to know the truth." The courthouse in Macapá was packed. Reporters with cameras and microphones crowded at the entrance, and onlookers squeezed in to get a seat in the gallery. Dona Elisa was already there, sitting with dignity, despite the dark circles under her eyes revealing sleepless nights. "Ready?" I asked, sitting next to her. She nodded, squeezing my hand briefly. The entrance of the defendants caused a stir in the room. First, Roberto, handcuffed and with an arrogant expression, as if this was just a temporary inconvenience. Then, Felipe, head down and pale, avoiding looking at any of us. And finally, Renata. My heart skipped a beat when our eyes met. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of remorse in her eyes, but it quickly turned into the same calculating coldness she had shown in recent months. Judge Clarice Fernandez, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, began the proceedings. The charges were read: attempted murder, poisoning, conspiracy, real estate fraud. With each new charge, I watched the defendants. Roberto maintained his defiant posture. Felipe seemed to shrink more and more. Renata remained impassive, like a statue of ice. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with steady steps, though my heart raced. I told my story, our story, leaving out no painful detail. I spoke about the first symptoms, the suspicions, the accidental cup swap that saved my life. "Are you absolutely sure that your daughter deliberately tried to poison you?" the prosecutor asked. "I am," I replied, looking directly at Renata. "We have the recordings where she discusses the plan with Felipe, where she admits to having tampered with my medications using arsenic. We have the tests that prove the gradual poisoning over months." "And as for the motive, money?" I simply replied. "My house is located in an area that would greatly increase in value with the construction of the tourist complex. Renata and Felipe were in debt, and Roberto Pixoto, with whom my daughter had an affair, orchestrated the entire real estate scheme." A murmur spread through the room. The judge called for silence, banging the gavel. "Miss Sonia," asked the defense attorney, standing up. "Don't you think it's possible that, given your age, you might have confused the facts? Perhaps misinterpreted your daughter's intentions?" I raised my chin indignantly. "I'm 58, not 98. I'm in full mental capacity, as the psychological reports already attached to the case confirm. And the evidence doesn't rely on my interpretation, it's objective and irrefutable." The lawyer tried a few more tactics to discredit my testimony, but I stood firm. When I left the stand, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. Mrs. Elisa's testimony was equally impactful. She described how she discovered the incriminating emails, how she tried to warn me, how Roberto attempted to poison her with beautiful lady chocolates. "I believe Roberto planned to kill me from the start," she stated. "The arsenic in my coffee was an accident. The real attempt was with the belladonna and the chocolates he gave me hours before." The hearing stretched for hours. When the judge finally announced that there was enough evidence to take the case to trial, denying bail to all defendants due to the seriousness of the charges, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. As I left the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Normally shy around cameras, this time I made sure to speak up. I trusted my daughter. I loved her unconditionally throughout her life. I declared into the microphone that was handed to me that in return, she tried to kill me for money. This isn't just my story, it's a warning. Sometimes danger doesn't come from strangers, but from those closest to us. That interview was broadcast on all local news and even some national ones. Within days, our story had captured the attention of all Brazil. I received dozens of supportive messages from people who identified with me, who had also been betrayed by family members. Somehow, my personal pain was helping others cope with their own. 2 weeks later, while I was trying to regain some normalcy in my life, I received an unexpected call from Detective Mendez. "Miss Sonia, I need you to come to the station immediately. Your daughter asked to speak with you." My stomach tightened. "What does she want?" "She says she has crucial information about other crimes committed by Roberto, but she will only speak with you present." Reluctantly, I agreed to go. Paulo insisted on accompanying me, worried it might be some kind of trap. At the station, I was taken to an interrogation room where Renata was waiting for me. She looked thinner, with deep dark circles under her eyes, the prison uniform making her almost unrecognizable compared to the elegant woman I once knew. "Mom," she said as I entered. Her voice softer than I expected. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from her, keeping my face impassive. "The detective said you have information." "I'm listening." She took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "First of all, I want you to know, this wasn't my idea at first. Roberto manipulated me, made me believe that, spare me the excuses." I interrupted, feeling the anger boil inside me. "You're an adult, Renata. You made your choices." She lowered her eyes. "You're right. I didn't come to apologize. I know that's impossible. I came because there are more victims, Mom, many more than you can imagine. For an hour, Renata detailed Roberto's other crimes. 3 other murders by poisoning in the last 5 years, all landowners of strategic properties. Corruption schemes involving high-ranking public officials. Money laundering through shell companies. Why are you telling this now? I asked when she finished. Because he's going to get away with it, Renata replied, a tremor in her voice. He has too many connections, too much money. He's already moving his pieces from inside prison. I heard the guards talking about a judge from the Superior Court pushing to have the case transferred to his jurisdiction. And why does that matter to you? Are you trying to negotiate a lighter sentence? She looked me straight in the eyes for the first time since I entered the room. I'm trying to do something right for the first time in a long time. Roberto isn't just a criminal, Mom, he's a monster. And I've become part of that. I let myself be seduced by money, by power. Her voice faltered. I lost everything. My husband, my freedom, your trust, but I can't let him escape. I left that meeting deeply disturbed. Part of me wanted to believe there was a shred of conscience in Renata. Another part suspected it was just another manipulation. The information she provided, however, proved to be true. In the following days, the police found evidence that corroborated her claims. New bodies were exhumed, new toxicology tests conducted. The case grew exponentially, attracting the attention of the federal police and the national press. A week later, Paolo approached me with alarming news. Renata was right, he said, showing me documents. Judge Silveira is moving heaven and earth to take over the case. And guess what? He has ties to Roberto. We found suspicious transfers to offshore accounts linked to the judge. What can we do? I asked, feeling despair rise. After all, would Roberto really get away? Paolo smiled. A smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Remember when you told me you wouldn't just be a victim in this story? Well, I have a plan, but it's risky and we'll need Renata. The plan was bold, almost reckless. Renata would be temporarily transferred to house arrest under the pretense of cooperating with the investigations. In reality, we would be using her as bait. Roberto would surely try to contact her, either to silence her or coordinate his defenses. When he did, we would be ready. I took a while to agree. Trusting Renata again, even under constant surveillance, seemed unthinkable. But the alternative, seeing Roberto free, possibly continuing his crimes, was even worse. She'll stay at my house, I finally declared, surprising even myself. Where I can keep a close watch on her. Paolo protested, as did Marlene and Mrs. Elisa, but I was determined. It's the last place Roberto would expect. And the symbolism won't escape him. The daughter returning to the house that almost killed her mother to get. The preparations were meticulous. Cameras and microphones were installed in every room. Undercover police monitored the house day and night. An electronic bracelet was placed on Renata's ankle to track her every move. When she arrived, discreetly escorted by 2 plainclothes officers, my heart tightened. Despite everything, it was my daughter coming home after weeks. Your room is just as you left it, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. The rules are simple. Don't touch anything that isn't yours, don't answer the phone or the door, don't go near the windows. Understood? She nodded without looking me in the eyes. Understood. The first few days were strange, tense. We moved through the house like ghosts, avoiding each other. I watched her on the monitor set up in my room, waiting for any sign of betrayal. She stayed in her room most of the time, reading or simply gazing out the window. On the 3rd night, while I was making tea in the kitchen, Renata appeared at the door. Can I come in? She asked timidly. I nodded, pointing to the chair across the table. I continued making my tea, my back turned to her, a deliberate gesture that showed more confidence than I truly felt. Why are you doing this? She finally asked, letting me keep her here after everything. I turned slowly. Don't confuse strategy with forgiveness, Renata. I'm doing this to catch Roberto. She lowered her eyes. Still, you could have kept me somewhere neutral, a safe house from the police. I sat at the table, staring at her. I wanted you here to remind me. Remind you of what? The cost of blind trust, the danger of believing that blood ties mean unconditional love. I took a sip of my tea. You almost killed me, Renata, in this house, with poison in my medicine, in my food. Every time I see you, I'm reminded to never let my guard down again. Tears sparkled in her eyes. I know it means nothing now, but I deeply regret it. Regret is easy when you get caught, I replied coldly. What I care about is justice. The next morning, the contact we had been waiting for finally happened. A delivery person dropped off a package for Renata, supposedly books sent by her lawyer. The analysis revealed a prepaid phone hidden inside one of the books with just one number stored in it. It's him, Renata confirmed when we showed her the device. That's the number Roberto used to contact me. The plan entered its critical phase. Under police guidance, Renata made the call, activating it on speakerphone so we could all hear. Roberto, her voice trembled slightly. Finally. The voice on the other end sounded irritated. Why did it take so long? I had to be careful. I'm under house arrest at my mom's place. A dry laugh. How ironic. The house that almost cost her life. What do you want? Renata asked, following the script we had prepared. I'm risking everything by talking to you. I want you to keep your mouth shut. The voice became threatening. You've said too much already. Thanks to your revelations, they're digging up bodies, investigating transactions. Do you have any idea what you're putting at risk and what I gain in return? Renata remained calm, impressing me with her performance. I'm facing decades in prison because of you. Because of me? Roberto laughed again. You were the one who decided to poison your mother, dear. I just suggested it would be convenient if she were no longer in the way. This explicit confession made the present officers exchange satisfied glances. We had Roberto admitting his involvement. Judge Silvera is taking on the case next week, Roberto continued. He'll handle everything. You'll get a minimal sentence, maybe even probation. As for me, the charges will be dropped due to lack of evidence. And my mother? Renata asked. What happens to her? Your mother will be a minor problem when this is all over, Roberto replied, his voice taking on a sinister tone. Accidents happen every day, don't they? Especially with elderly people. A chill ran down my spine. Even in prison, he was still planning to eliminate me. When will you be out? Renata asked, keeping him on the line. Soon, very soon. And when that happens, we'll meet at our usual place. I have plans for us, Renata. Big plans. The call ended, and the room erupted into activity. Officers were making calls, taking notes, celebrating discreetly. We had done it. Irrefutable evidence against Roberto and the corrupt judge. You were convincing, I told Renata when we were finally alone. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't hard. That's how we communicated. Him giving orders, me obeying. Why, Renata? I asked. The question that had tormented me for weeks. Why did you get involved with him? Why did you agree to all this? She took a deep breath. It started as a silly affair. I was unhappy in my marriage. Felipe was always absent. Roberto made me feel desired, important. Then I found out about his business, the money involved. He painted such a tempting picture. Both of us, rich and powerful, living a life of luxury. And that was worth more than my life. My voice faltered. Nothing is worth a life, Mom, she replied, looking out the window. I lost myself somewhere along the way. I became someone I no longer recognize. In the following days, the case exploded in the news. Judge Silvera was suspended, investigated for corruption. New victims of Roberto were identified, his crimes exposed. The resort case, as it became known, turned into one of the biggest criminal scandals in recent Macapá history. The trial took place months later. Roberto was sentenced to 82 years in prison for multiple homicides, attempted murder, corruption, and money laundering. Felipe received 15 years with the possibility of reduction for his cooperation. As for Renata, her decisive cooperation in dismantling Roberto's criminal scheme weighed in her favor. Still, she was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder against me. On the day of the sentencing, after the judge left the courtroom, I approached her before the guards took her away. "I'll visit you," I said, surprising both of us. "Not today, not tomorrow, but someday." She felt it, tears silently streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mom." When I left the courthouse that day, a strange sense of closure enveloped me. It wasn't forgiveness. Some wounds are too deep to heal completely. It was more like acceptance. The daughter I knew and loved was lost forever. Perhaps, with time, a new Renata would emerge from the ashes of this tragedy. 2 months later, I sold my house. I could no longer live there, with so many painful memories embedded in its walls. I bought a small farm on the outskirts of Macapá, where the air is pure and the mornings are quiet. Dona Elisa became a close friend, our bond forged in shared pain. Together, we created a foundation to help elderly victims of domestic violence, a way to turn our tragedy into something positive. Sometimes, when the sun sets over the Amazon River, I think about how life can change in an instant. How the accidental swap of 2 coffee cups altered the course of so many lives. That moment saved my life, but it cost me my daughter. If there's a lesson in all this, perhaps it's that the deadliest dangers don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they hide in the smiles of those we love, in the hands we once held with trust. But I also learned that we are stronger than we think, that even at 58, a supposedly defenseless woman can take down a criminal scheme, confront traitors, and rebuild her life from the ashes. Today, as I write these words in my new home, with the scent of jasmine wafting through the window, I feel at peace. It's not a perfect peace. It carries scars, regrets, unanswered questions, but it's my peace, earned through tears and courage. And for now, that is enough. Conclusion and call to action. Who would have thought my story, so painful and personal, would touch so many lives? When I started sharing it with you, I felt a mix of apprehension and necessity, the need to share this experience so that perhaps someone could learn from it, so that others wouldn't have to live what I lived. To sum up what happened, I, Sonia Oliveira, a 58-year-old woman from Macapá in Amapá, almost lost my life at the hands of my own daughter. Renata, along with her husband Felipe and her lover Roberto, planned to slowly poison me with arsenic, all to take my house, which would greatly increase in value with the construction of a nearby resort. A simple gesture, the accidental swap of coffee cups during a visit, saved my life and exposed the entire conspiracy. The poison meant for me ended up being ingested by Dona Elisa, Renata's mother-in-law. It was the beginning of an incredible journey, where I uncovered a web of crimes far greater than I could have imagined. With the help of my friend Paulo, a former police officer, and Dona Elisa herself, we uncovered not just the attempted murder against me, but a series of other murders committed by Roberto Peixoto, a man posing as a respectable businessman while manipulating my daughter and eliminating anyone who stood in the way of his real estate plans. We set a trap using my own house and even my daughter as bait. We gathered irrefutable evidence, not just against the 3 of them, but also against a corrupt judge who tried to free Roberto from justice. In the end, they were all convicted. Roberto got 82 years in prison, Felipe 15 years, and Renata, my own daughter, 20 years, with a reduced sentence for her crucial cooperation. But this story isn't just about betrayal and justice, it's about discovering strength when we need it most. It's about how, even at 58, a woman everyone saw as potentially fragile and manipulable was able to dismantle a complex criminal scheme and rebuild her life from the ruins of betrayal. I sold that house filled with painful memories and started anew on a small farm on the outskirts of Macapá. Together with Dona Elisa, who became a close friend, I founded an organization to help elderly victims of domestic violence. We transformed our pain into purpose, our tragedy into hope for others. As for Renata, I promised to visit her one day, not out of obligation, not from a false sense of maternal duty, but because a part of me needs to understand, needs to see if there is truly remorse in the one who was once my beloved daughter. Forgiveness is a long road that I am still walking, a hesitant step at a time. If there are lessons to be learned from this story, perhaps they are these: never underestimate the power of greed to turn those we love into dangerous strangers. Never ignore the small signs that something is wrong, those inexplicable symptoms, those behaviors that don't make sense. And, most importantly, never, ever doubt your own strength, your ability to fight, to survive, to rebuild. Sometimes I think about that morning, the seemingly insignificant gesture of swapping 2 cups of coffee, how fate sometimes hangs on such fragile, small moments, one different movement of my arm. And I wouldn't be here to tell this story. I wouldn't have unmasked Roberto, I wouldn't have prevented other murders, I wouldn't have founded our organization, which has already helped dozens of vulnerable elderly people. It's strange to think this way, but I almost feel grateful for that cup exchange. Not for the pain, not for the betrayal, those will never be welcome, but for the strength I discovered within myself, for the clarity that only comes when we are face to face with our own mortality. Today, when I look at the Amazon River from the porch of my new home, I feel a peace that carries scars, yet it is still peace. I learned that we can survive the unthinkable, that we can lose almost everything, even the love of a daughter, and still find reasons to go on, to rebuild, to help others. This is my story, raw, painful, but true in every word. And if you've made it this far with me, I have a few requests. First, if this story touched you in any way, please subscribe to the channel. Every new subscriber is a person who chooses to hear real stories, stories that can save lives, stories that remind us of the incredible human resilience. Clicking that subscribe button takes just a second of your time, but it means the world to us. Second, leave a like on this video. That simple gesture helps our channel reach more people, touch more hearts, and perhaps, who knows, prevent other tragedies like mine from happening. When you leave a like, you're saying, yes, these stories matter. Yes, I want to hear more. Third, and perhaps most importantly, comment, tell us how you felt hearing my story. Have you ever suspected someone close? Have you faced deep betrayal? Or perhaps you have that special person you trust completely? Your comments are not just messages to me, they are conversations among all of us who are part of this community. I know that every video I produce is like opening a vein and letting a bit of my soul flow out. It's emotionally exhausting, it takes time, energy, courage. So, if you can, consider helping through Value Dem Ace, our way of receiving donations to keep the channel running and bringing more videos daily. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps cover production costs, equipment, and research to bring authentic stories like this. Your financial support means I can continue dedicating my time to this project that has become my life's mission after everything I've been through. And don't forget to check out our other videos. Each story here is unique, powerful, and real. Stories of overcoming, betrayal, redemption, and second chances. Stories that make us laugh, cry, reflect, and question. Stories that remind us what it means to be human, with all our flaws, our capacity for evil, but also our surprising resilience and unwavering hope. I sincerely thank you for joining me on this painful journey, for being witnesses to my story, for listening with compassion, without judgment. This channel has become my way of making sense of what I've lived, turning my pain into something useful for others. Next week, I'll bring you another story that will make you question everything you think you know about trust and relationships. Don't miss it. In the meantime, stay alert to the signs, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the deadliest danger can come hidden in a simple cup of coffee, offered by hands we thought would only bring us love. Until the next video. This is Sonia Oliveira from the channel, reminding everyone that our stories, no matter how painful, deserve to be told.